I would like to tackle the question of measuring your own fluency. How do you measure your fluency and how do you actually measure your progress? I talk a lot about it in my blog posts and in my videos, and I say it to my students all the time, and yet people have a lot of questions. So I want to show you examples of how I measure my own fluency, and hopefully when you see examples it's going to get a little bit clearer to you. Many people think that the only thing they need to measure is time. So if you have been learning English for a number of months, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 12, 24 months or years, at some point you're supposed to get fluent. That is not entirely true. If you simply keep moving and if you simply keep doing the things that you have been already doing and things that do not really yield results, well, you're going to arrive at a place where you already know how to do all these things, but they don't yield any results. That's very logical. So measuring your progress is very important. At least it's important for me, and I try to measure my own skills and my progress every 3 months. Because if I don't really understand if I'm steering in the right direction. Where am I going? And every 3 months I have a chance to give feedback to myself on the progress I'm making, and if necessary, I correct the course. And that is the core idea behind measuring your skills. You can analyze what you are doing, what you should continue doing, what you should stop doing, and what you should be doing more of, what you should be doing less of, so that you can correct your course of action. The one thing I never measure, and I think it has nothing to do with measuring your fluency, is the number of words. A lot of people think that the more words they know, the more fluent they get, but in reality, the number of words you know has nothing to do with how fluent you are. If you know not enough words to hold a conversation or to express your thoughts and ideas, yes, that's an indicator that you need to expand your vocabulary. But we know a lot of people who can hold a conversation, who can speak fast, who can react timely, and many people measure fluency just by one parameter, speed. So if a person can speak fast, can react fast, can respond quickly, but they're terrible communicators, They might be giving their conversation partners the words that they know, or they might be giving their conversation partners words, and they might be giving them a job to make a sentence out of these words, or to figure out what these words even mean. It can be very fluent, it can be very fast, but it doesn't mean a person is a good communicator, and it doesn't mean a person is fluent in the language. So let's be very specific here. And the number of words doesn't really mean you're fluent or you're not fluent. It's not what I measure. And a lot of my students make the mistake of measuring the number of unknown words in any piece of text they're working with, or in a video they might be working with, or in a podcast. Again, it's not something I would measure because, look, if I read a blog post today, there will be maybe one word that I do not know and I'll look it up. But if I start reading Nabokov, or if I start reading Fitzgerald, or if I start reading a scientific article, there will be many more words that I do not understand. And does it mean that my English has suddenly become worse if I encounter more words that I don't understand? No. It simply means I'm learning to work with a different type of content. So I would not measure the number of words I don't know in a written piece of text, or in a podcast, or in a YouTube video, because that's just a very easy way to get upset. And that's not the point. It doesn't really measure anything, and it doesn't help you measure anything. In order to measure anything, we need to understand what we will be measuring. First is parameters. What am I actually measuring? Fluency is not something that is so easy to measure. You have to break it down into very tangible and clear elements so that you can measure each element. What parameters of fluency are we going to measure? And then it's also very important to understand the metrics. Are we going to measure those elements in what? In kilograms? In liters? In milliliters? In milliseconds? What is our measurement system? If people don't know what they're measuring, how to measure it, when to measure it, of course they don't measure it. This is why I'm showing you examples. Another important thing is we need to understand what is either the norm and how far are we from the norm, or we need to understand what is 100%, right? When people say, oh, I hear pretty much 60% of what people tell me, or when I watch English movies, I understand 85% of what people say, I always ask them this question: how do you know if this is really 85% of what people are saying? How do you know? You can only know if it's 85% if you know what 100% is. So the first thing you need to know is you need to know how to find this 100%, what it is actually. If you don't know what 100% is, then it's really hard to measure. And when we work on our listening skills, it is possible to measure 100%. It's possible to measure the progress you are making when you work on your listening skills. Everyone who is working on the listening course, learn to hear every single word in English, has a table they have to fill out so that they can measure their progress I suggest you start measuring it every 2 weeks, and then maybe every month, and then every 2 months, every 3 months. And the more advanced you get, maybe you can measure it once every 6 months, but I still stick to 3 months. That's my number. But if we talk about measuring fluency, what is 100% when it comes to fluency? How do you know what 100% is? How will you know that you have achieved fluency if you have never been there? If you have never been fluent yet? I mean, you don't have experience of what it means and how it feels to be fluent in the language. How can you even do these calculations? I mean, it's impossible, right? We only can, understand what 3% is or 63% is when we know what 100% is. If you don't know this number, then what's the point of even thinking this way? It makes no sense. Let me show you how I do it. It is still something I advise to do. Like, you need to understand what is the feeling and what is the fact. So when we work on understanding how much better my listening skills have become, we do the reading exercise. You can read things out loud, or you can listen to a podcast. So you work with some type of authentic material. And 100% in one paragraph, we usually work with something that is not longer than one paragraph. It's usually 5 or 6 lines. And the number of words in this paragraph is our 100%. You can count the number of words. Usually one paragraph has, maybe 93 words, let's say. There are 93 words in this paragraph. Sometimes paragraphs can be longer and they might contain a lot more words, 193. But if a paragraph is 93 words, that is our 100%. And you can calculate how many words you mispronounce when you read this paragraph out loud. There can be many words that you know, but you have no idea how to say them correctly. And when you receive feedback, or maybe when you give feedback to yourself and you look up the pronunciation of these words, you might find that 7 words actually should be pronounced differently from the way you pronounce them. And that is something you can actually calculate. So you can say, in this text, I mispronounced 7% of words. And I pronounce 93% of words correctly in this paragraph. And when you do this exercise often, and when you work with different types of content, and when you get into a habit of reading 1 paragraph a day, at least out loud, usually I read no more than 1 paragraph a day. I don't read the entire book. You can calculate what your average number is. So 93% today, 60% tomorrow, 50% the other day. 75% the next day. And what is your average number, right? Let's say in a month. This is something we can calculate, but because we know what 100% is, you can also calculate, let's say if you know the number of words in 1 paragraph, you know 100%, you know what it is. You can calculate the amount of words that you misheard. Let's say when we do the exercise of transcribing 1 minute of audio, you have to write down everything that you hear. Try writing down the lyrics of your favorite song. We all have songs that we love listening to, the English songs, but we probably have never asked ourselves what the song is about, and we never care to sing along. So if you like one song enough to sing along, try listening to the song and writing down exactly what you hear, every word, or work with a movie scene that is no longer than 1 minute long. And actually, if you're a beginner, if you have never done this exercise before, I recommend you start with 20 seconds only. Transcribe it, and you can calculate how many words people said in this 20 seconds. Make sure that you have the transcript available, and you can count the number of words that people said in a movie. Or you can open up the lyrics of the song, and you can go to genius.com. You can find lyrics of all songs there. And you can calculate the number of words that people sing in the song. And again, you can calculate very easily. You can count the number of words that you misheard, because you'll have to look at your own notes. You will be writing things down. How many words did you write incorrectly? How many words you couldn't write because you simply couldn't hear them? Let's say a song contains, 400 words, right? And you didn't hear 20 words. You can already do the math. This is the percentage of words that you misheard. You couldn't hear them. After this exercise, it's very important to read the transcript or the lyrics and listen to the piece that you misheard one more time so that you can synchronize for your brain the spelling of the word and the sound, how it should be spelled, how it should be written down, and how it actually sounds, and what it actually means, so that you can teach yourself that this word that you know that is written in front of you should be pronounced this way, or can be pronounced this way when native speakers say this word. When you say this word in your head, it probably sounds different, and that's why you can't hear it when native speakers say this word. So if we work with exercises like this, yes, we can do the math, and we can calculate pretty much very accurately how much we hear and what's our number. I hear on average 70% of what native speakers say, or I hear 93% of what native speakers say. And depending on the accent, when British people talk, I understand more, and when Americans speak, I only understand like very roughly what they say. Everything is measurable in the system of native-like fluency that I teach. Everything, you can measure every parameter. But we also have situations when you don't have 100% available. You don't know what it is because, as I said before, you have never been there, right? You don't really know what fluency can feel like and what it can sound like and what it is. And in this situation, you have to ask your gut feeling. So, okay, I want to be fluent. I hear how people talk. I see other people who are fluent. I see native speakers who are fluent. And I know where I am. So based on my inner feeling, based on how I feel, where am I now? We have to start somewhere, right? So 100% is where I want to be. Where am I now? Just based on how I feel about it. A lot of people say, I'm around, like, if they're already upper intermediate advanced, they say something like, okay, 60%, I'm somewhere here. I need to go to what this 100%. Just ask yourself, how does it feel? And then, but this is just the feeling. It's also important to check this, to test how you feel about it. But remember that we always need to work with facts, and we need to find a way to measure all these things and to operate with facts, because then you will be comparing your fact with the actual number. A lot of people, when they say, well, I understand when I watch movies, I understand 90% of what people are telling me. And then we do the exercise and we do the measurement, and it turns out that they understand only 35% of what people say. You see? And this mismatch is important to notice. If you tell yourself that you're almost fluent, but it turns out that when we look at the facts that you're not even close, then you understand at least in which direction you should be going and what you should be doing, right? To achieve fluency. Some people undervalue their own results and what they have already achieved. That happens as well. So yeah, you can do this as well, but remember to compare it with facts. Now let's talk about the parameters that we can measure. Usually my table looks like this. In the first column, I write the time. As I said, I measure my skills every 2 or 3 months. So it means here I will be writing, let's say, January to March 2021. I'm not measuring things that I've done in one day. I'm measuring my progress that I have made within 3 months. This is why this is a very important column here. First of all, time. And here I will be writing down the parameters that I'm actually measuring. My parameters are my skills, because to me, at least, fluency is a set of skills. You can break this complex idea into a lot of tangible elements. And to me, every element is a skill. Skill number 1, skill number 2, 3, 4, etc., etc. At the moment, I'm measuring about 25 parameters, but you can start with 9. I have a lot of videos actually on the 9 essential skills that you need to achieve native-like fluency. And you can write them down right here. Let's say skill number 1 can be listening comprehension skills. How much has my listening improved And I need to understand the metrics, like how I'm going to actually measure it. And here I write down the result. For example, from January to March 2021, my average percentage, like listening skills, when I work with podcasts, my listening comprehension skills can be measured at 78%. It means I understand on average 78% of what native speakers tell me. And I work only with authentic materials. I mostly listen, let's say, to American native speakers. Those native speakers who live in the United States. I listen to American accents mostly. Or maybe I listen to British accent. Or maybe my goal is to understand Australian accent better. So I listen to that percentage. And that's it. So, and then in the next row will be the next date. I'm going to come back to my results and I'm going to look at what I have achieved from April, May to June or July to 2021. And I'm going to see, has this number even changed? Because maybe it's going to stay the same, maybe it's going to change, maybe it's going to go up, maybe it's going to go down, I don't know. And even if it goes down, it doesn't mean that I stopped making any progress. I have to look at all the parameters. So if here my listening comprehension skills were at 75%, maybe here they will be at 81%, I don't know. It really depends what I'm measuring. But let me give you an example of what parameters you can include in your table. In my case, this is, well, listening comprehension skills. But I also break it down. Listening comprehension skills might mean how well do I understand spontaneous speech? How well do I understand people who speak with an American accent? How well do I understand Australians? How well do I understand people from Ireland or from the north of Britain? So depending on the accent. But you don't have to do it as well. All you need to do is how many words do I hear when people say? What I measure is, do I hear every single word that people say? And do I really understand what they tell me? Or do I kind of, try to connect the words that I know together and try to figure out what it is they mean by putting together the words that I understand and hear? This is what I measure. Do I hear every word that native speakers say? And if not, what's the percentage? How much do I actually hear? If 10 years ago, watching an English movie used to be a torture for me because I couldn't understand everything that people were saying in movies. And if I turned subtitles on, I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't do both. I couldn't watch a movie and read the subtitles and think about the words I didn't know. So it was just a mess. I couldn't synchronize all these processes. Today, it's easy. I usually keep the subtitles on because I'm ready to see or hear some words I might not know yet, or maybe some words that will indicate geographical locations or very complicated names or some made up objects or, any vocabulary related with anything that I'm just not an expert in, maybe military vocabulary or physics or chemistry, all these things that I'm just not very competent. So I might really not know these words even in my first language. So I usually keep them on. The next parameter I measure is speed of many things. How fast do I understand what people tell me? How fast can I respond in a spontaneous conversation? How fast can I articulate my ideas? How much time do I need to get camera ready? Because for a lot of people, this is a lot of stress, being in front of camera, speaking in front of camera, thinking about what they want to say. I practice speed. If I read out loud, I measure the number of iterations. So it used to be more than 10. So I had to read a text, let's say 10 times, at least 10 times to myself, so that I really understand what it is about, and so that I'm ready to deliver it to other people so that they can understand what I'm reading. And when I practice speed, I practice communicating the meaning faster. So without all these preparations, can I read the text that I see for the first time so well that it sounds like an audiobook? Well, kind of, this way. I'm playing with these concepts. The speed of my comprehension, because the faster I can do it, probably not the faster I can do it, but that's an indicator that my comprehension, my speed of comprehension has increased. You see, if I can look at the information and make sense of it fast, I can also deliver it to other people faster. Then another thing I measure, let me look at my notes. I measure the percentage of what I understand. And we don't talk about the words that I probably do not hear, or the words that I just don't know, and that's why I don't hear them. But we talk about situations when people speak English and you understand the English that they use, but you don't really understand what they mean. And I measure the percentage of situations like this, like how many situations like this have I encountered this week or this month? And if there are many of the situations, maybe it's not really my problem. Maybe people can't articulate their ideas. But then I measure this parameter. What have I done? What am I doing in the situations to achieve some understanding, or to improve our communication, or to help myself understand what's going on? What do I say? Do I know what to say? In how many of those situations, let's say I've had 10 situations like this, this month, where people were saying something and I couldn't figure out what they were saying, and that's why I couldn't speak up in a meeting, and that's why I couldn't really answer their questions. In all these 10 situations, what did I do? Did I ask a question that would help me clarify what's going on? Did I speak up? Did I know what to say? If I did nothing in all these 10 situations, that is what I'm going to write down in this table. 0. I did nothing. 0 attempt to improve the situation. And then I'm going to think, why? I was scared. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to put it in English. I was not sure that I understood correctly. Like, what stopped me from improving the situation? And then if this is really bad, this is something I would definitely work on, because if I want to be a part of this team, I need to know how to communicate. I need to check my own understanding, and I would start doing at least something, to help myself figure out what's going on. And then I would measure the number of times I did something and I achieved a result. So let's say, again, the next month I will have 10 more meetings with the same people, and chances are very high that I will not understand what they want from me or what is going on again in every meeting. In how many of those meetings will I actually do something? Will I act? Will I speak up? And what will I say? That is something that I will measure. The next parameter I measure is the number of iterations. There are key exercises that I do no matter what, and I recommend them to all the students because they are fundamental if you really want to improve your fluency. The chat karaoke exercise, the reading out loud, the transcribing exercise, the free flow speaking exercises, they are fundamental. There are maybe 10 or 12 exercises like this, or summarizing, and I measure how well I do each exercise. Am I getting better at every exercise? For example, how many iterations do I need to do before I'm satisfied with how I did this exercise? As I mentioned before, reading out loud. How many times do I need to read it to myself before I can read it out loud and record myself so that I sound like an audiobook? That's the number of iterations. Or if I do a free flow speaking exercise, and of course the first thing I'm going to deliver, because it's spontaneous, is not going to be perfect. I'm going to apply the self-correcting algorithms. So again, I will count how many iterations did I need to do to arrive at a clean and clear version of what I wanted to say. How many times did I need to do the same exercise again before I come up with something that I actually like and other people understand? That is what I count. Okay, free flow speaking exercise. This month, my average number of iterations has been 7. Next month, or in the next 3 months, I'm going to see, what has changed. Maybe my number has stayed the same. Maybe it hasn't even changed, and that's okay. Because these things do not change very fast. This is why the next important parameter that I measure is joy and comfort. You can actually draw a scale, and this is what I do for myself. Try working with every exercise this way. As I said, there are not so many exercises and they're fundamental. Those people who are taking my programs, you already understand what I'm talking about. Here is like on a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is terrible. I don't like it at all. And 10 is very comfortable. Joy. I feel joy. On a scale from 1 to 10, how much joy did this exercise bring you today? If you're just starting out, a lot of exercises will seem and feel very difficult. And if your number is somewhere here, 2, It doesn't mean it's a bad exercise. It doesn't mean you're a bad student. It simply means you have to do some work to correct the course of action. If you're working with the exercise reading out loud, let's say, of course, if you're reading the whole page and you have to look up every word that you're reading and you understand that the pronunciation of every word you're reading is not quite correct, you will feel exhausted and just not very good at the end of the exercise. And your number might be 2. This exercise didn't bring me any joy. So what can you do to correct, the way you do this exercise so that it brings you more joy? It's very important that the exercises and the work you do bring you satisfaction and joy, because when you feel the sense of accomplishment and satisfaction, you want to come back to this exercise again. And when you feel joy, it's amazing. You want to do it again and you understand the value of the work that you're doing. What I would do is I would look at the length of the paragraph that I'm working with. If reading a page brings me so much stress, I would reduce it to 1 paragraph. If you're reading 1 paragraph and you realize that in order to read it properly, you need 40 minutes and it just stresses you out, I would reduce a paragraph to 2 sentences. Read 2 sentences only. If this is too much, read 1 sentence, but in such a way so that you really love the way you read it and it brings you joy. Try thinking about it in these terms. Maybe if you reduce the amount of work in this particular exercise, it can bring you more joy, maybe something around 7 or 8. Working with paragraph is not worse than working with the entire page, because when you measure your progress, you're comparing your progress with your progress before. We don't really know what 100% is. We don't really know where exactly we're having. We have a very vague idea of what fluency is, like we have seen it. Right? We know what it can look like, but we've never been there. So we don't really understand what it takes to get there and what it feels when you are there. This is why do not compare yourself to other people, because you have no idea how much time they spend achieving this, working on their fluency, and you have no idea what is taking them. Maybe they were born, in an English-speaking country. Maybe they're married to someone who is a native speaker. Maybe one of their parents is a native speaker, or maybe they really worked on their English skills 8 hours a day, every day for years. It has not been my strategy. I have a lot of respect for people who are fluent and who have done so much to improve their language skills, but that's never been my strategy, really, studying 8 hours a day. I prefer a different approach. So I always work on this parameter. How much joy does every exercise bring me? And if it doesn't bring me joy, I see what needs to be corrected, so that I can feel better doing this exercise. Maybe I'm working with a text that don't inspire me. Okay, I need to change the text. Or maybe I should listen to something that I find interesting. I don't need to listen to anything or to what my teacher told me I should listen to just because I want to improve my English skills. I want to listen to something meaningful, something that makes sense to me. I can change this. I can change the length of my paragraph, or the length of the text I'm working with, or the length of the video I'm working with. I can definitely influence that. And to be honest, that's pretty much it. So if you change the material you're working with, and if you change the length, it already makes it a lot easier and a lot more enjoyable. So then in my table, I'm going to write down the number, not the percentage, but the number. The scale of comfort. On a scale from 1 to 10, my comfort has been 5 or 8 or 9. I also measure time. How much time does it take me to do the needed amount of iterations to arrive at the quality that I want? Let's take again, reading out loud. I work with 1 paragraph. I have found out by doing the exercise, not by thinking about the exercise and listening to other people, but by doing the exercise myself, I have found out that I need to do a minimum of 7 iterations. It means I need to read the text at least 7 times before I can do a very good reading job, before I can sound like an audiobook, let's say. But that's my level. Maybe you just want to make sure that you read everything correctly. That might be your standard. I want to sound like an audiobook. That's my quality standard, so that I can paint pictures with my voice to people who don't see the text, to people who can only rely on my voice And to people who have experience listening to audiobooks, because when you listen to an audiobook, you don't need to see the text. Usually the narrator does such a good job that you see everything that's going on. You can imagine it, you can visualize, and you can feel it. That's my quality standard. Maybe yours is slightly different. And I measure time, which means I need to do 7 iterations to deliver really good quality work. And I always set the timer. How much time did this 7 iterations take me? And this is what I measure. 7 iterations took me 40 minutes. Next month, 7 iterations took me 35 minutes. Next month, 7 iterations already take me 15 minutes. You know, this is what I mean. And when you look at the numbers, when you have numbers, not just vague ideas and not just gut feeling, that will be completely wrong because you have never been there. You don't really know what it's like. And everything you call a gut feeling is just a guess. That's it. It's just a guess. But when you have facts, it's the whole thing, you know, the whole journey of achieving fluency becomes more enjoyable because you understand where you're going. You can steer, you know, the vehicle that actually takes you to fluency. And that is amazing because you know what you can correct and you understand that you can influence every process and every element on this journey. And you really can, because nobody can, just you. And also, when I say time, you can measure the time you spend doing exercises. How much time does English have in every of your day? Maybe some days you don't speak any English. Maybe some days you speak English all day. You know, I don't really know. But time is an interesting parameter. And I'm giving you just examples, but I'm not saying that this is the rule of thumb. This is how everybody should be measuring their fluency. I'm giving you ideas, and everybody should think of the best parameters they need to measure because, you know, we all are very different. Our individual learning patterns are different, and we all come from a slightly different background. Somebody has really good listening skills, but they need to improve their pronunciation, or they need to improve their clarity. How clearly do they communicate their ideas? Some people are very fluent, meaning they don't really need to work on pace or speed, but they need to remove repetitions and redundant words from their speech. Some people speak very well, but they cannot write. So they need to do more writing exercises, and this is what they need to measure. How many iterations do they have to do? How many times do they need to edit their text before they arrive at a clean version that can be published on their blog, right? Something like that. What parameters exactly are you measuring? You can start with a set of maybe 3 or 5 parameters that are important for you. And the more you do it, the more you will understand what other parameters you can add to your table. And you have to understand the metrics. Are we measuring it in what? As I said, milliliters, kilograms. My metrics are usually percentage, minutes, months, number of iterations, duration, the level of comfort and joy that every exercise brings to me. I hope that makes sense. And my message is, it shouldn't feel vague. Well, it's a long journey, but it shouldn't feel like something you can't do because you don't really understand how it needs to be done. Everything should be measurable. And it makes things so much easier when you can see where you're going. So if you have any questions, please type them in the comments under this video. Thank you very much for being here with me, and I'll speak to you soon.